Hello friends, this is Lakshmi prasanna studying Bpharmacy first year in Maharaja College of Pharmacy. Today I want to discuss about proteins and classifications. Let us see introduction of proteins. Proteins are polymers of alpha amino acids. Proteins are synthesized from only 20 amino acids known as the common amino acids. Amino acids are mainly formed of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen and nitrogen. Nitrogen is a characteristic component of proteins, forming about 16% of their weight. That is, 100 grams of protein contains 16 grams of nitrogen. Coming to structure of proteins, there are 4 types of structure of proteins. 1. Primary protein structure. 2. Secondary protein structure. 3. Tertiary protein structure. 4. Quaternary protein structure. Let us discuss one by one. Coming to primary protein structure, it is a sequence of a chain of amino acid joined together by peptide bonds. Here, peptide bonds are mainly responsible for maintaining primary protein structure. Let us discuss about secondary protein structure. It has hydrogen bonding of the peptide backbone causes the amino acids to fold into a repeating pattern. H bonds are responsible for maintaining of secondary protein structure. Coming to tertiary protein structure, it has three-dimensional folding pattern of a protein due to side chain interaction. Coming to quaternary protein structure, proteins consisting of more than one amino acid chain. These subunits are associated through H bond, ionic interaction, hydrophobic interactions. Coming to protein classification. Classification based on structures are fibrous proteins, globular proteins, intermediate proteins, and classification based on compositions are simple proteins, conjugated proteins, and classification based on functions. Structural proteins like keratin of hair, nails, enzymes, hormone proteins are example insulin. Coming to pigments, transports proteins, contractile proteins, storage proteins, toxins. Classification on proteins. On the basis of composition and solubility of proteins are three proteins: simple protein, conjugated protein, derived protein. Simple protein is nothing but it consists 50% carbon, 7% hydrogen, 23% oxygen, 16% nitrogen, 0 to 3% of sulfur. Under these simple proteins, there are two types of proteins: fibrous proteins, globular proteins. Coming to fibrous proteins, these are rod-like structures. They are stretched and contracted like threads. These are made up of peptide chains. They are insoluble in water. For example, keratin, muscle proteins. Coming to globular proteins, these are less or more spherical in nature. They are very soluble in aqueous solutions. Example, myoglobin, albumin, hemoglobin, casein, and protein hormones. Coming to conjugated proteins, nucleoproteins, glyco or mucoproteins, chromoproteins, phosphoproteins, metalloproteins, lipoproteins are under the conjugated proteins. Let us discuss about derived proteins. Two types of proteins: primary derived proteins and secondary derived proteins. Coming to on the basis of nutritive value of proteins, three types: complete proteins, partially complete proteins, incomplete proteins. Coming to complete proteins, some examples are meat, fish, egg. Coming to incomplete proteins, beans, peas, corn are examples of incomplete proteins. The combining of two incomplete proteins are formed to produce one complete proteins. Let us discuss on the basis of shape and size of proteins: fibrous proteins, globular proteins. On the basis of functions of proteins are structural proteins, catalytic proteins, hormonal proteins, deficiency proteins, transport proteins, blood clot proteins, storage proteins, carrier proteins, receptor proteins, signal transaction proteins, buffer proteins, nucleoproteins, contractile proteins. These are the under basis of functions of proteins. Reference book by U. Satyanarayana and U. Chakrapani. Thank you, one and all.